Sri Lanka has always been a fascinating blend of sights, sounds, and experiences. But it's fair to say the island country is now enjoying a newfound modern identity on the world map and being recognized as a highly influential hub for trade and tourism located in the heart of the Indian Ocean, of course. So to shed more light on the nation's growing economic, cultural, and strategic relevance, I'm joined in studio by a highly distinguished guest. Please join me in welcoming Professor Ruwan Ranasinghe, Deputy Minister of Tourism, Sri Lanka. Professor Ranasinghe, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and join us in studio.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So for sake of some context setting, all right, the data seems to indicate that Sri Lanka enjoyed a tourist footfall of nearly 2.4 million in 2025. You know, the overwhelming share of tourists coming from India, followed by the United Kingdom. Does this statistic take you by surprise at all, and do you expect the trend to continue?
Well, tourism, when we started 1960s actually in Sri Lanka, the European market was dominating.
Sure.
And German, France, UK. But with the growth of the economies in Asia, the trend was changing. And of course, we have the reading of this transformation of the market. So India is now, anyway, is a huge market for Sri Lanka.
Absolutely.
And we are really looking forward for this trend to continue. And we are also taking steps to transform the industry operations. In fact, it is already, because a lot of Indian investments, Indian hotel operators are in Sri Lanka.
Right.
So we expect this trend to continue as well in the future.
Well, since you brought up growth, Sri Lanka is very much setting its sights on higher heights. You're eyeing a tourist footfall figure of upwards of 3 million for the year 2026, and you clocked a highly positive January, is my understanding. So it's all looking positive. But my specific question to you is the broader tourism narrative undergoing a transformation, sir, where you're looking to diversify that tourist footfall base and perhaps attract a more high value, as in high spending tourist?
Absolutely. It's not just numbers. Our government is also new. Mm-hmm. We put forward in our manifesto to build a sustainable and an inclusive tourism industry.
Right.
Which means, tourism is in certain areas, but we need to take that into inside the country and get the economic benefits out of the industry for many communities to connect it with the local economy. Mm-hmm. So in this effort, there are a lot of developments going on. Mm-hmm. Quality standards, registration, then enforcement, and all these things are going on. So as I mentioned, our policy will continue to develop a sustainable and inclusive tourism industry.
Absolutely, sir. And when we look at Sri Lanka as a nation, it's enjoying and reaping the benefits of innovation across all fronts, from edtech to medtech, from fintech to food tech, right, to name a few. So what are some of the new niche market segments within the broader tourism landscape that you expect to mature rapidly over, say, the next decade?
As I said, 1960s, it was triple S, the sun, sea and sand, where tourism came to Sri Lanka.
Correct.
But later, 1980s, we declared UNESCO World Heritage Sites of our royal heritage and the Buddhist heritage. So based on these two products, we have continued a couple of decades the tourism, but now we are diversifying into particularly wildlife and even these tech-savvy new generations, like,
sure.
Segments like technology, followed by, this digital nomads market,
right.
Something that we are working on. Mm-hmm. And also sports tourism, golfers, mm-hmm. and those are some new segments that we are looking at. Film tourism, mm-hmm. wedding tourism,
absolutely.
New segments, so that working on these markets, mm-hmm. we can increase the per tourist expenditure, mm-hmm. and also reach out to the high spending tourist market.
And so the one segment that we perhaps have not yet touched on in the conversation is the increasingly sustainable tourist, who is eco-friendly and cares for a similar experience, values travel that aligns with those ethics, correct? So when you take a look at Sri Lanka and its beautiful beaches and natural landscapes, how does that eco-friendly factor fit into the larger, broader picture and how you pitch tourism abroad?
Yeah, now Sri Lanka is a small island, and ecology is heavily diverse there.
Correct.
We are a country, a small island though, but we have a rainforest inside. And maintaining this sustainability or ecology and running tourism, of course it's challenging, but we have a lot of initiatives. For example, if a tourism investment to be done, maybe a hotel or whatever, park or whatever, so there is a very tough environmental regulations. There should be central environmental agency. We need to get a license or clearance. So that is why there are certain investors, they will have to wait for six months or 1 year to clear all these things. There are some 30 odd licenses to be cleared. So ecology or environmental fitness is one of the very important concern in that sense. Other than that, I believe for next couple of decades it will be ecology and environment for tourism. So it is our responsibility to protect. I mean, we have some 20 odd national parks for wildlife, for ecology, for bird sanctuaries, and so on and so forth. So ecology is still, I believe, our prominent tourism product, and we are fully committed to conserve that while making them use in tourism.
And sir, Sri Lanka's trump card, to my mind, has always been location. All right, it's nested in the heart of the Indian Ocean. It's located at the crossroads of global shipping routes, and therefore it provides uninterrupted year-round access to regional markets, right, and international markets. But one of the challenges is perhaps how do you replicate that same model to attract tourist footfall in the so-called off-peak months, right? What concerted efforts is the government making in that direction? Because it seems like an area of hugely untapped potential.
Of course, Sri Lanka has been traditionally, as I said, when European markets were dominating, it was the winter period in Europe where our season activates. But now, as I said, Asian markets are growing. So we are working on for Sri Lanka, fortunately we don't have tough winters, so tough so therefore that much of a seasonal effect generally we don't get. But in the tourism industry we get, because which is there in the Western Europe. So now with the growth of markets like India, then we are working on markets like China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, US. I think we can attract right throughout the year a considerable number of visitors, for which in the absence of these European charters, now we have this new airport, Matala International Airport, which we will give embarkation levy free landing there for charter flights. So therefore, I think we can start some charter flight from India to be landed at Matala embarkation levy free, so that we can fill this gap. And we are working on that actually, especially winter markets also, like Spain. I mean the summer markets. They are also traveling during the summer, and even the Middle East. Now working on these markets for off season, we can ensure the traffic right throughout the year.
Excellent, and that's very encouraging. And it leads me, into my next question, which is around the fact that, unfortunately, Sri Lanka has experienced its fair share of natural disasters between, Cyclone Ditwa and floods, and the list goes on. So, how challenging is it for someone in your position to continuously revitalize tourism infrastructure in the wake of those natural disasters, sir?
Yeah, the tourism, in fact, in Sri Lanka, has been on rosy paths. It has gone through tough periods throughout. It was tsunami, and then a 30-year war. Even our airport was attacked at some point. So then there was this some terrorist attacks, even recently COVID-19 and so on and so forth, and very recent being Ditwa cyclone. So I must be, thankful at this occasion because I know there was 62,000 plus tourists during Ditwa cyclone, and I mean roads were closed for a couple of days,
Exactly.
and some of those visitors were secluded in areas.
Right.
At that time, luckily, there was this Sagarband operation with India in the Indian Ocean nearby.
Right.
So immediately, a couple of helicopters were deployed. So we were able to rescue many of them, and not a single scratch for a single tourist. So everyone was, safely went back to their homes. So we recovered actually very fast, and
So
roads were
heartening to
cleared,
hear. Yes.
and couple of tourist attractions were closed for 1 week or so. Everything is back to normal now, except the upcountry railway. Upcountry railway is open from Nanuwa or Ambewala to Badulla. That part is operating, but from Colombo to Kandy still there are certain constructions going on. We hope within 1 or 2 months, very soon, we can open that line also. And Central Highlands, that is this Knuckles region is UNESCO World Heritage as well. This region was severely affected and was closed for, I mean, two weeks back. That was also open. So now almost all the tourist attractions are open. Heavy construction is going on for the railway. Other than that, almost other things back to normal now.
Well, I hope our viewers are listening and planning their next visit. And since you brought up Sri Lanka's royal heritage, its historic royal heritage, on more than one occasion in this conversation, the flip side is that there is all this conversation around modernizing Sri Lanka, right? Amidst all of these forces, these sometimes competing forces, how do you preserve homegrown handicrafts or the local artisan community, sir? Because I think that's incredibly pivotal to Sri Lanka's larger tourism narrative.
Yes, it's very important. We have identified actually times back, way in 1980s when we introduced this provincial council system.
Right.
Each province, there are 9 provinces. Each province, they have a industrial ministry. Under this ministry, there is, they are registering and looking after these craft industries or cottage industries. And also we have a national craft council, which very recently we had an exhibition also in Kandy to promote these products for tourism industry. And most of, Sigiriya is being World Heritage and one of our leading tourist destinations. We have a craft village. So there are a lot of, recognition and concessions and opportunities given to these, craftsmen and, communities, so that we can preserve that as well as take that to the global stage. So the government is taking steps financially and policy schemes to preserve these, craft or cottage industries and continue them. Of course, there need to be technology, know-how, and consultancy for them to, come up to cater to the growing global demand and, linking with these tourists' way of thinking as well.
Absolutely. And you brought up exhibitions a moment ago. So we can't possibly have a conversation around tourism without bringing up mice. Okay, that is an incredibly pivotal a slice of the pie when it comes to the tourism eco-sector, an ecosystem. So that said, essentially, what inroads has Sri Lanka made to invite, international meetings, conferences, expos to home turf?
Well, Sri Lanka, we have, one of the oldest convention bureaus in the region, Sri Lanka Convention Bureau. Continuously, they are investing and working on attracting a MICE market.
Right.
And we have also some very good venues for international conferences. We have hosted some, Commonwealth, like even we competed for Commonwealth Games in 2017, but we lost that to Gold Coast.
Right.
But, I mean, Sri Lanka is one of those, I would say, top places for a conference, since it is a very, compacted place where while your business visit or the conference, after you can go to a beach, go to the hill country, or travel around, and some venues with our infrastructure accessibility. I think for MICE and conferences is one of those top choices.
And so, look, Sri Lanka is also known for its incredibly warm hospitality. And that ultimately comes down to its citizens, right? Its people, correct? So as and when you engage with entrepreneurs in this space, right, what's your larger message to them, in terms of them essentially being the brand ambassadors for this beautiful island country?
Well, as you quite rightly said, I think hospitality of our people, that is our strength for industry. So each and every single citizen of our country whom you will meet will smile at you.
I certainly will meet, especially when that charter flight is locked and loaded. I will be on it.
Yeah. So therefore, that's going to be our strength, and that is an inheritance, feature in our communities, which will continue for next generation, and so. So therefore, hospitality and maybe even our education, the language, all these things are pluses for our tourism, and there is a lot of growing opportunity for investors to come and invest with our human resource, and also growing potential for tourism. So we are very much open for investors to come and invest.
So Professor, one topic we have yet to touch on is the Sri Lankan mouth-watering cuisine. There are options for vegetarians and non-vegetarians alike. You seem to appeal to all palates. To what extent is that a pull in your larger, tourism appeal?
Well, Sri Lanka is known for centuries for its spices.
Right.
We were very attracted for Europeans, for Middle East in the past for our spices. So our cuisine is almost quite like we are in the same subcontinent, like India, Sri Lanka.
Sure.
Some similarities. Yet our uniqueness relies on these spices. This small land produces a range of spices. We produce the best cinnamon in the world, and the pepper, if you take, again the strongest one. So with maybe the soil conditions, the climatic conditions, the temperature, so on and so forth, we produce a very good spices, and our cuisine is spicy. So we have seafood to roots, so it's a land of food, and I think Sri Lankan food is something for a visitor to come and experience. So we are equipped with some excellent chefs in the world,
right?
And there is a range of opportunities to experience a range of type of food for visitors.
Absolutely. And sir, for someone in your position, I'd imagine that the challenge is often to essentially paint the tourism picture beyond Colombo alone. Right? When people think of Sri Lanka, immediately Colombo is the first and perhaps only city that often comes to mind when Sri Lanka has so much more to offer. Right? So what kind of awareness campaigns do you champion to essentially better crystallize the perception around the nation?
In Sri Lanka, actually, it is different. Now we have the Colombo International Airport. Directly, since it is very small, many tourists, they go to Kandy or to the cultural triangle of Dambulla, Anuradhapura, or down south, Gol, Miris and beaches. So, in fact, it is being challenging now to keep tourists in Colombo. So, we are planning some activities in Colombo as well. But east and west coast, I think there need to be. Now we are working on a domestic aviation policy to link Jaffna, Colombo, Betiklo and Trincomalee, like domestic aviation, because we need to work on these upmarket tourists.
Sure.
So once domestic aviation in action, I think we can fully cater to that growing market as well.
Well, since you brought up upmarket tourists, I'm not sure if medical tourism essentially falls into that category, but the growing trend among travelers of European origin or American origin is to head east or head to Asia for invasive and non-invasive treatments alike, correct? Because of affordability and lack of compromise in quality. What's Sri Lanka's stance on that? Do you see it emerging as the next medical tourism hub, sir?
Yeah, I think yes. We are now in the process of passing a medical tourism policy. The cabinet paper is ready now because, as you quite rightly said, our education system was very strong, and our medical education is that much competitive. Out of those who appear for biology advanced level,
Right.
1 or 2% will enter the medical colleges. So that is the spirit.
Sure.
And most of them, most of our surgeons and specialists, they are educated in Europe or or those countries for their higher education. So we have some top medical experts in different areas, and also some cutting edge technology and the hospital network. And with this, we are presently also working with some medical tourism with countries like Maldives, Bangladesh,
Right.
and of course we have a huge potential and opportunity.
Right.
And the required policy formulation is being going on now, and I'm sure we can compete in this market and attract huge opportunity. As you said, affordability would be the factor.
Absolutely. And look, Indian weddings have always been grand, extremely over the top, and we like it that way. And I think given the cultural similarities we share as neighboring countries, in Sri Lanka it's perhaps somewhat of the same. So that said, when you eye the wedding destination market or subsegment of the market, how do you peg its growth rate? How bullish are you on this particular subsegment? Come to Sri Lanka, get married here. Our doors are open. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it is. Of course, Sri Lanka is a wedding destination. I mean, if someone to do outdoor or the wedding outside, in the natural environment, by the beach, maybe by a lake,
Right.
the perfect place should be Sri Lanka with the systems, that we have. So I think I would love to invite, someone who wants to get married in a very, very sensitive, or I would say feeling environment.
Sure.
It would be, yeah.
And perhaps
Sri
if
Lanka
not
would
the wedding, then the honeymoon. All right. And sir, by way of closing comments, all right, when we look at entrepreneurs in the tourism and travel space, right, they're obviously eyeing the next big opportunity in terms of returns. All right. So if you're in conversation with those entrepreneurs as to sub-segments of the market that have the most potential, how might you identify them, and what would your words of advice be to that entrepreneur who's still on the edge as to what triggers to pull and what decision to make next?
In hospitality, tourism sector in Sri Lanka, my experience is, the ROI will be 5-6 years like. So I think that's one of the good,
that's a healthy time horizon.
Yeah.
Yes.
So therefore, I mean, there is a huge potential. As I said, numbers, we are looking at very much positive.
Right.
If, international setup things, will smoothly run like this, I'm sure the tourism sector would be one of the top choices for investors. In Sri Lanka, as you know, it gives the return as well as the ROI in time.
All right, excellent. Well, it's been incredible to learn about your great nation, sir, and it's been incredible to host you here in India. We wish you all the continued success and a safe trip back to Sri Lanka.
Thank you. Thank you very much.